Wrestling nostalgia has seemingly been around since the sport began. There's always fans clamoring for more of the good old days or an old-timer looking for one more run. And that was on full display for 4 days throughout the beautiful nation of Australia for the Hulkamania Let the Battle Begin tour. This is the Hulkster Down Under. In late 2009, Hulk Hogan was in a weird spot with wrestling and life. Arguably the biggest star the business had ever seen was on the outs with WWE, but not for the reasons he'd be on the outs later. His reality competition show, Celebrity Championship Wrestling, had failed the year before, and he was going through a very contentious and expensive divorce. The Hulkster was looking for his next move when he and Eric Bischoff were approached by Condon Sports and Entertainment, a promotional company based out of Australia. The conversation was actually facilitated by Rikishi's cousin, Reno the Black Pearl, who had been working with Condon at the time when they mentioned to him that they'd like to do a big show with Hogan attached. The idea was simple. Hogan and friends tour the country cashing in on people's love of wrestling from the late 80s and early 90s. A lot of other people have tried it, so why not them? Surely they could make it work. They were especially hopeful since Hogan had never worked Australia before. He'd been advertised for the WWE Global Warning Tour in 2002, but didn't make the trip. After a few meetings, Hogan, Bischoff, and Condon came to an agreement and put the wheels in motion for the tour. The stops selected were Melbourne, Perth, Brisbane, and Sydney. And Condon wasn't some fly-by-night grifter. They'd set up Australian tours for major acts like the Rolling Stones. They had money and they were confident they'd make plenty more with the Hulkster. First order of business, who would Hogan wrestle? It needed to be a big name. Maybe someone he'd battled in the past, but someone people would also want to see. Well, for Bischoff and Hogan, the answer was obvious. Ric Flair. The Nature Boy hadn't wrestled in over a year and had been pretty vocal about his unhappiness being retired by WWE, feeling like he'd been put out to pasture before his time. He tried to stay active in the business without getting in the ring, but all these ventures ended in controversy. So, Flair decided it was again time to walk the aisle. Once Nate was on board, it was pretty easy to convince others from Hulk and Ric's generation to join too. They welcomed Hogan's usual suspects, Jimmy Hart, Brutus Beefcake, and the Nasty Boys. I guess Greg Valentine and Virgil were busy. With the legends secured, it was time to bring on more modern names like Ken Anderson, Umaga, Shannon Moore, Heidenreich, Orlando Jordan, and hell yes, Matt Cross in his Spartan gimmick. And because it's a nostalgia tour, you gotta have some of your Attitude Era favorites, like The Godfather, Val Venus, Brian Christopher, Rikishi, and hell yes again, Gangrel. Damn, that's quite the lineup. And Lacey Von Erich was there too. Talents were paid half their fee prior to the start of the tour, with the rest being placed into an Australian escrow account for after the shows. Hogan and pals were flown first class, everyone else probably coach or maybe business class. Either way, flights to Australia, not cheap. Also, according to Bischoff, talents were put up in 5-star accommodations every stop of the tour. Condon spent a lot of time and money promoting the shows. They'd booked some pretty big venues, so they had no other choice. They aired commercials, radio spots, posted promos on social media. Hogan flew in early and appeared on a whole host of Australian TV shows to promote the events. They did whatever they could to get the word out.
In the world of professional wrestling, one man is king.
Get ready, Australia. I'm heading your way, and I'm bringing the greatest wrestlers in the whole wide world.
Hulkamania, the ultimate wrestling spectacular. Tickets on sale 9 a.m. Thursday at Ticketek.
Let the battle begin.
Let's actually go back and take a look at some of the promos that they posted, because they are unhinged in the best possible way. And clearly the microphones that they used could not handle a shouty 80s wrestler promo.
So what you gonna do? Woo! Nature Boy, when the power of Hulk Hogan destroys you! And when we talk about Australia, Snalia, brother, it's a big deal. Put another shrimp on the Barbie. Good day, Hulkamaniac, mate. Every major promotion in the world would like to have a handle on the Nature Boy. There's only one 16-time World Heavyweight Champion. Hey, Australia, you've seen the rest. Now look at the very best in tag team wrestling. That's right, we're bad, we're mean, and we are nasty. And if you need to know what the pit stop is all about, it's a stinky, nasty situation. Get ready to get nasty-sized, Australia. Let's do it. Let's do it. Come on, come on. No, Jimmy, you get out of here. Come on, let's do this. Come on, do it. Okay. Oh, yeah, okay. Hulkamania, you're friends. You can run, but you can't hide.
This one, though, is probably my favorite, because at the end, Hogan just, poof, disappears into the void. So let's get into the shows. And for reasons that you'll soon discover, the only footage from the events themselves are these fan cam clips. So apologies for the quality and repetition in the video. Every card was different from show to show, with two exceptions. Matt Cross vs. Shannon Moore was billed as a best-of-3 series, but of course they went to a draw on night 3, forcing a 4th decision ladder match. What was at stake in the ladder match? I'm not sure. If you were in attendance or know by some other means, please let me know in the comments. And of course, the main event of each night was Flair vs. Hogan. And by the way, if you're wondering, the combined age of the roster was 40. Unfortunately, there's not much match footage floating around aside from the main event. From what we find with results and clips, most of the roster use their most famous gimmicks, just with legally different names, if not using their real name. Like Umaga becoming Uso Fatu, and Godfather becoming the incredibly subtle Pimp Father. And because it's prior to 2018, Gangrel was going by Vampire Warrior. We can't really determine the match quality, but from the chatter I've seen online, the reviews are mixed. There's some folks that were there live that enjoyed it for what it was, and others that were saddened by the performances of some of their favorites. I'm sure the Shannon Moore vs. Matt Cross matches were the highlight of each night, but really how good could Beefcake and Anderson vs. Jordan and Umaga be? All things considered, the main event that I've watched online, it's okay. It's not as embarrassing as you'd think, and it's certainly a better watch than anything either man did in Impact. 3 out of the 4 matches were no DQ to cover up for their limitations, with Hogan getting the win every night. Sorry for the spoiler that Hogan would win on a tour named after him, with red and yellow ropes. Not sure if they bled buckets every night, but I really wouldn't be surprised. Would you? And what a shocker, Flair gets his ass out. Thankfully, they changed the finishes from night to night, with different wrestlers filling in the interference role, but always with Hogan cheating to win. What a babyface. Now to the post-tour controversy. So you'll remember the group's pay being placed in an escrow account by Condon, the big buildings they booked, all that. Well, they were in 15,000 seat arenas and drawing only about 5,000 to 7,000 depending on the source. They had limited merchandise to sell, which is crazy to me considering Hogan is one of the most merchandise stars ever in the business. Just slap Hulkamania Tour on a shirt, on a bandana, can koozies, boomerangs for God's sake. Even if it was a one-off 4-day tour, that's a huge opportunity to cash in on the Hulkster. The tour didn't make any money. It, in fact, lost money. Perhaps even what was in escrow. Bischoff's lawyers tried to resolve and get the crew the rest of the pay. And here's why there's no DVDs of the events. Condon wanted Bischoff and Hogan to give up the DVD rights that they had ownership of. They refused until the money was released from escrow, which didn't happen, so no DVD was put together. Which is truly unfortunate considering these were Umaga's last matches before his death in December of 2009. There was some more legal back and forth, and eventually Bischoff and Hogan realized it would cost more to litigate than they were actually going to get paid, so they dropped pursuing a case. If Condon hadn't booked such large buildings off the bat, things might have gone completely different. They should have booked smaller buildings and waited for the demand to force them to move. Honestly, it worked for Ric Flair's last match. Granted, the overall card was way better, but the point remains the same. And that's the story of Hogan's Australian Hulkamania Tour. A promoter banking on a big payday off wrestling nostalgia. A tale as old as time, it seems. Thankfully, for them anyway, Hogan and Bischoff would land a spot in Impact, and we all know how that went. Yikes. Hopefully Goldberg's potential farewell tour goes a little better than this one. Are there other one-off events and failed shows I should cover? Let me know in the comments. I'm Scott from Retrospective. Thanks for watching.